Hi everyone, my name's Zach and I am the New York City coding and tech tutor, and this is the second video in a video series about how to create an iOS, Android, and web app using the same code base, using JavaScript, um, and doing it through React and Ionic. So in this video, we are going to um, I'm going to show you how to set up the environment, and I'm going to touch a little bit on version control, which is really important. But mostly, I'm going to talk about setting up the environment. So here we go. All right, so you need to go to the Ionic docs to read about how to set up the environment. So I'm going here to docs. I'm going here to installation. Actually, I'm going to click up one to environment setup, and I'm going to start looking here. So I'm on a Windows computer, but terminal is available on Windows or Mac, obviously. And basically, you need to go open up your terminal, and you need to make sure that you have installed Node and npm. If you type node dash dash version and it tells you a version, then you know that you have Node installed. If you type npm dash dash version, then you'll know that that's installed. So that's very important. Okay, that's installed, and npm is also installed for me. If they are not installed, you absolutely must install them. So you just search for Node, go here, and you install it. I usually install the recommended for most users version, so not the newest version, just the slightly older version. Okay. You also have to install Git. Now, this is part of version control. This is not absolutely required, but as I've coded more and more over the years, I've realized how important it is to use version control, not only to like go back in time if you make a mistake, but also to if you want to work on this on more than one computer, it's way easier to transfer your files from from a desktop to a laptop if you're using version control. The reason for that is because version control basically it backs up only the most important files for your project, and therefore when you go onto another computer, you can quickly download only the most important files. And then when you're on that other computer, you can just do a command that says npm install, which basically just like downloads all the additional junk that you need. Not junk, but all the additional like modules that you need. And it just makes working between multiple locations or multiple computers so much easier. So, and it's also sometimes required by code editors, code editing software. So definitely install Git. If it's not GitHub, which we will also install, but I'm just talking about Git first. GitHub is something that's built on top of Git. So yeah, you just go here to this website, you go to downloads, and you download either the Windows or the Mac version, and you should be good to go. Okay, once you've installed those things, you are going to need a code editor. So I use, and a lot of people use, this code editor, which is called Visual Studio Code. It's made by Microsoft, but it works excellently on Mac operating systems and everything else. To find it, just search for Visual Code, go here, and download it. It is an excellent code editing software, code typing software, and it's used by professionals as well as newbies. It's just great. So definitely I recommend using Visual Studio Code. Once you've installed Visual Studio Code, you're going to want to install a couple extensions for it. Really the only extension you need is the one I most well, okay. I do recommend this one, Prettier. To search for it, you just search for it up here and you find it and then you press install. Prettier lets you do a shortcut key that just cleans up all of your code. On Windows, it is window key shift F to F, I believe, to like clean up your code to like make all the indents look nice. On Mac, it's slightly different, but if you read this, you'll find out what the Mac shortcut key is. Looks like it's right there. So I highly recommend Prettier, installing Prettier here on the extensions, and I also recommend this auto save on window change. This means that as soon as I click away from Visual Studio Code and like back onto my app, which you'll see in a second, it's going to save it automatically for me, which means I don't have to hit the refresh key. I don't need or Command S or file save. I just basically, when I want to see my changes, I just click where I want to look, where I'm looking at my app, and it's just saved automatically. So I highly recommend installing those two. I also have these icons here installed, which just make the icons look a little nicer in the side tab. It's really not necessary, but if you want to install that, you can. Okay, once you've installed Visual Studio Code or some other editor, then you need to go to Terminal and open a terminal. Now, if I already had a project here opened, if I had already opened my folder for my project, and then I open terminal, I'd be right in the directory that I want to be in to work on my project down here. But since I haven't started any project yet, it's just putting me in my my user directory, and so I want to get started on Ionic. So going back here, if you go to, that's the environment. I'm going now here to CLI installation. And first I'm going to install Ionic globally, which means I'm not installing it to any specific project or any specific directory. And I know it's globally because it has the -G. I'm just installing it to like my whole system. So that I'm installing it to my whole system. So you're gonna do that. I'm not gonna run it right now because I've already run it. But you just run that and it installs Ionic globally. All right, and then it tells you how to start an app. Now then, there's different ways to start an app. This tells you Ionic start my app tabs, which will give you a app that has some components already in it, some tab components. But if you just leave off the tab part and you just say Ionic start and then the name of this is going to create the folder and therefore sort of the name of your app, or at least the folder name of your app right here. So Ionic start is like the command, and then this right here is what the name of the folder is going to be. So I'm going to go back here to my terminal. I'm going to go cd dot dot to go back out. I think it's cd space dot dot on a Mac. Cd dot dot. All right, doing that twice brought me all the way to my C folder. And now I'm going to do Ionic start my app 2. I'm going to call it my app 2 because I already did this once. My app 2 is going to be the name of the folder. If I press enter there, it's asking me some questions. It's asking me Angular, React, Vue. As I said in the first video, this video series is all about working with React. So I'm going to choose React. All right, there you can see that tabs thing. That's that one right there. I don't want the tabs. I want the blank one. So it's like bare bones blank, choosing that. And then it's installing. Then I have to wait. All right, now it's asking me to create a free Ionic account. I actually already have an account. I'm gonna press no here. You can if you want create an account. It's not that important. And that's it. So now if I go to my C folder on my computer, I'll see that I have a folder here called My App 2. And I have the beginnings of an Ionic app. Now, I'm not going to look at it. I'm looking at it in Windows Explorer now, but where I really want to look at it is here. I want to open the folder on my C drive. And here I'm opening the folder in Visual Studio Code. And now I have all the files that I need to start my Ionic app. I have a public folder. I have this source folder that has pages, components, some theme, which is like CSS styling. The sort of starter file here, which is called app.tsx. And then this is also kind of a starter file, index.tsx. I have all of these, which are not very important. basically from here, this, not really important for our needs. This is important, although we don't have to change it. This get ignore tells us what once we back this up onto GitHub using the Git technology, get ignore will make sure that we don't send every single item in our folder to GitHub, which we don't need to do, and which is very time intensive and slows down the backup process, and also slows down the ability to work on this on another computer or from another location. So get ignore is important, and I'm glad and we're happy that it's put there for us. We don't have to make it ourselves. This is kind of an important file, but not that important for this tutorial. It has some of the most basic information about our Ionic app. It's called Capacitor because Capacitor is actually the software that Ionic uses to convert our JSON, our JavaScript code to code that iOS and Android apps can understand. When we view our app as just a web app, which is one of the three ways that we're going to view our app, capacitor doesn't come in as much into play, or I'm not sure if it comes into play at all. But capacitor is what's important when you're looking at an app. That's why it says splash screen here, because you know how on apps you see that splash screen at the beginning sometimes. So yeah, it has to do with viewing the app on devices other than just the web. All right, and that's got some more config stuff. That's just a package lock JSON. It goes into details about every single thing. You don't usually have to change this. Package.json, this is something you need to look at for every now and then. It's pretty important. It tells you what we're using. You can see that we're using React. You can see that we're using Ionic/React. You can see that we're using Node. We're using TypeScript. Yeah, we're going to come back to this maybe a couple times. And then this is about TypeScript. So we're actually sort of going to be using TypeScript, not JavaScript in this file, in this tutorial. But I am going to do something right now that is going to make our TypeScript look so much like JavaScript that it basically is JavaScript. I'm going to change this Boolean variable right here in my tsconfig file, which stands for TypeScript config.json. I'm going to change this strict to false. And basically what this is telling our project that we don't want to use strict TypeScript, meaning we don't want to have to constantly be telling all of our functions and all of our classes exactly what types of data they're using. We want to be like a little loose about it. We want to use a loosely typed programming language. We don't want to be we don't want to have to be so specific. Now then, if we were working at like an enterprise level with like a gigantic team, and this was like becoming a huge app where other people needed to use your components, and they needed to know what type of data is being passed to various components and functions and classes and all that stuff, then your team would want you to keep strict on. They would want you to type in strict TypeScript. But for our purposes and for learning purposes, we don't want to have to type in strict TypeScript. We just want to type in basically JavaScript, because that's sort of what JavaScript is. TypeScript is just a more strict version of JavaScript. So we just want to type JavaScript. So that's why we're changing that. All right. And then, okay. So then if you want to, I think it's time to actually look at what this app looks like. So I'm going to open the terminal again, and you can see this time when I open the terminal, it brought me right to my my folder. And so when I'm in my folder, I can type, and this is in the docs, but I can type Ionic serve. And this is basically turning my computer into a local server. So it's like turning my computer into something that pretends to be like a real server, a web server. And it shows me what my app looks like. So this is what my app looks like right now. It's just got this boilerplate stuff. I'm using Firefox web browser right now. You can use Google Chrome, that's fine. But in all of them, you want to make sure that when you're working, you have your where is it? I forgot. I know the hotkey, but yeah, it's web. I always do Control Shift I. My console here should be open on the side as I'm working. And also you need to know about this button. This button is also on Chrome. This switches it to make it look more when it's on this mode, it's basically trying to replicate a mobile device. So since most of what we're doing is most of what we're learning about in this tutorial is how to make things that are going to work on an iOS, on the as an iOS app or as an Android app or as a like a web app, meaning a app that looks good on web browsers on phones. We want to keep it on this mode most of the time so that we can see like what it looks like on an iPhone 5 or what it looks like on an iPhone 10. Okay, I usually like to keep. I always check what it looks like on an iPhone 5 because that's sort of like the smallest that anybody uses these days. But most of the time, I keep it on like the 6, 7, 8 because that's about medium size of most phones these days. All right, and that is it. So in the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about version control. Then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about like setting up this folder. I'll talk more about setting up this folder because there's a couple things more things I want to change here. And then we're going to actually start building our app. So stay tuned. See you in the next video. Bye.